watch here, so I will.
Okay, about 40 minutes.
Time.
Okay, I think we're live. Bem, olá, boa tarde. Sejam bem-vindas, bem-vindos ao ciclo de palestras da Sociedade Brasileira de Filosofia e Analítica. Esta é a 20ª edição. Se trata de um evento mensal em que membros da comunidade convidam palestrantes para uma apresentação. Nessa 20ª edição, eu, Eduarda Calado Barbosa, da Universidade Estadual de Campinas, a Unicamp, vou estar conversando, estarei recebendo Maria de Ponte, da Universidade do País Basco, para falar sobre filosofia da linguagem, sobre, mais especificamente, referência, que é um tema comum entre as duas. Especificamente, Maria é uma das defensoras do referencialismo crítico, da pragmática crítica, que pode ser definida como uma forma de referencialismo que critica o monoproposicionalismo, a doutrina das proposições. Ela vai falar mais sobre isso em breve. Bem, como a Maria não é falante de português, eu vou passar para o inglês, infelizmente. Eu vou passar para o inglês para uma breve apresentação do seu trabalho. So I would like to give a warm welcome to Professor Maria de Ponte and thank her for kindly accepting this invitation. I'm sure the Brazilian analytic community will benefit enormously from her expertise on philosophy of language and on issues related to reference. Maria de Ponte is an associate professor in philosophy at the University of the Basque Country. She's the director of the Institute for Logic, Cognition, Language and Information, and a member of the research group on language and thought. Other than her work in philosophy of language, she is also interested in philosophy of logic and mathematics, as well as philosophy of time. As I said in Portuguese, she's one of the main proponents of critical referentialism and pragmatics, which can be defined as a form of referentialism that is critical of monopropositionalism and the doctrine of propositions, which she will tell us more about soon. She has authored a number of publications and co-authored many publications with Kepa Korta and John Perry. And today she will talk about continued belief and temporal indexicals. The title of the work is Ephemeral Episodes, Durable Contents. So without further ado, I would like to welcome you, Maria, and the virtual floor is yours.
Let me put this. So thank you very much, Eduarda. Before starting, let me say I'm sorry I don't speak Portuguese. I wish I could. I understand Portuguese, so I understood. I mean, speaking Spanish, but I'm sorry that I cannot give the talk in Portuguese. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here, and I'll try to make a short and nice talk. So the title of my talk is Ephemeral Episodes and Durable Contents. As you see there, I signed Maria de Ponte and Kepa Korta. So this talk is based, I wouldn't say on a paper, but it's on a manuscript, let's say. It's a work in progress that I'm doing with Kepa Korta and also with John Perry, because as you are going to see, as Eduarda said, the proposal we're going to defend here is critical referentialism based on John Perry's work, and also critical pragmatics based on the work done by John Perry and Kepa Korta, and then also by with me. So basically what we're trying to do is to present a basic framework to account for some very basic issues concerning belief and cognitive dynamics, in particular beliefs that what people usually call indexical beliefs, that is, beliefs that we would normally express using indexicals, right? So that is issues concerning belief retention and change of belief, like when we say we change our mind about something. And of course, the starting point is in all of these discussions is usually Frege's famous quote in the thoughts, right? So Frege said, if someone wants to say today what he expressed yesterday, using the word today, he will replace his word with yesterday. Although the thought is the same, the verbal expression must be different in order that the change of sense, which would otherwise be affected by the differing times of utterance, can be cancelled out. So you have one thought with different verbal expressions. Now, if you look at the literature in general, you will see, of course, there are many options, many ways to deal with it. We all know that indexicals, there were a problem for Frege's theory, right? Frege struggled with indexicals. So basically in the literature, if you look at the literature, they usually say, okay, we have two big options. The first one is, according to which indexicality is just a property of certain linguistic expressions, right? So, or a property of the relation between the expressions and the thoughts they contribute to express. The second view, which is usually attributed to John Perry, and I put a question mark because as we will argue, this is wrong, but is the idea that indexical is essential in somehow, meaning that it is a property of the thoughts themselves, right? So in that sense, according to this view, there are indexical thoughts. Of course, within this second view, you have an option, which was defended by Gareth Evans. You could actually claim, look, these indexical thoughts are still complete Fregean thoughts. They're still complete Fregean thoughts that remain the same, but they are dynamic somehow. So they remain the same through contextual changes. So if I have an indexical thought about today, after midnight, I will have the same thought, but slightly different, right? So it's slightly different because tomorrow that thought I would express it by using yesterday. Today I would express it by using today. But roughly it is the same complete Fregean thought. This view is attractive. I mean, it's very appealing because it helps explaining the intuition we have that we're actually believing the same thing. If I think that today is a nice day and tomorrow morning I wake up and I say, oh, yesterday was a nice day, we have a clear intuition that I am thinking or I am believing the same thing about the same day. But it does have, it has a problem. This problem was raised by Kaplan, and it basically can be put like that. When does an indexical thought become another thought because of a contextual change? And when does it stay the same despite the change? So when can we say that there is a continued belief, discontinued belief, or a change of mind? When do we change our beliefs? Now, our aim, our goal in this future paper and in this talk is to present a basic framework to account for to answer this question, to account for several cases in which you have continued belief, discontinued belief, or change of mind. So this is the goal. Okay. Now, let me just say something else about the two options. We believe that Perry's view was actually the first one. Indexicality is just a property of certain linguistic expressions. Indeed, John Perry never used the term indexical thought. He never claimed that indexicality was essential in any significant way. He thought that indexicals raised particular issues not raised by proper names or by other definite descriptions, and he took the term essential from Héctor Neri Castañeda, right? Who thought that I and now were essentials in that sense. Of course, according to Perry's view, so according to John Perry's view, in 1977, in his Fregean demonstratives, and then 1979, the essential indexical, the problem of the essential indexical. The idea is when you have an utterance of an indexical sentence, an utterance of a sentence that contains an indexical, they do not express a Fregean complete thought. In those papers, he claimed that they would express a hybrid. They would express a thought understood as information, a sort of a hybrid between an object and an incomplete Fregean sense. In later papers, he came to claim that they express a Russellian singular proposition. Okay, we are not going to get into that, but it's not important for us. And in our framework and in Perry's theory, we do not reject the existence of dynamic thoughts. I mean, we don't have an argument against dynamic thoughts. We just claim, or we think, that this intuition that there is something that you believe and that you keep believing across time, across contextual differences or across changes on location or whatever, there is a much simpler account of that in terms of truth conditions and notions and a clearer view of what a belief is in terms of episodes. So this is the framework I'm going to present. I hope it will become clearer as I keep on going. This is just a sort of an introduction. As Eduarda mentioned in the presentation, one of the key elements of critical referentialism is the rejection of monopropositionalism. This actually comes from Perry's earlier works in 77, 79, and he rejected what he called the doctrine of propositions. Basically, I mean, this is a complex issue, but what is relevant for us here is the rejection of the view according to which a belief consists in a relation between a subject and a proposition. Of course, there are subjects, there are propositional contents of somehow, but this is not what a belief is, right? In the earlier papers, John Perry insisted on we have to make the difference between what is belief and how it is believed. Later, that view got more and more complicated, more and more elaborate, and he ended up with critical referentialism, where we have different levels of truth conditions and other elements. We are going to be using that later framework, and I will explain exactly what we need from it. But basically, the rejection of the doctrine of proposition in what is relevant for us here is that no matter what kind of proposition is adopted, Fregean proposition, Russellian singular proposition, a hybrid of some sort, a set of possible worlds, it will not do all the jobs that it is supposed to be doing, that people ask from it. That is, represent the object or the subject matter of beliefs and statements, represent the truth conditions, account for communicative exchanges, account for the cognitive motivation and impact, and the last point is the one I'm going to be focusing on, explain belief dynamics, that is, belief retention and change. It's just, it doesn't do the job. That's like kind of the negative claim of this talk, which I'm going to leave it there. I'm not going to give arguments for it, because these are arguments that were already given by John Perry, and both in the early papers and in later work. So that's like the background, right? The background notions. Of course, this is just to say, John Perry introduced the idea of self or locating belief, and these are belief expressible by indexical identity statements. Something like, I am Maria, that is usually called dese, or this is Paris, or this is Donosti, this is June 24, or this is September 20. So this is just to say these are the kinds of beliefs or thoughts that we're going to be dealing with. These are indexical beliefs in the sense that these are beliefs that we normally express using indexicals. Not necessarily, but we normally express using indexicals, right? That's the only thing we need. So, okay, so that's kind of the background. Yes, the kind of the historical, let's say, or philosophical background, I think, hopefully will become clear. Now, as I said, our goal is to answer Kaplan's questions. How do we account for belief retention, change of belief, continuity, discontinuity? When does an indexical thought become another thought because of contextual change or not? And our claim is going to be, look, basically, our approach is, rather than start thinking of how Frege's or Evans or whatever theory work or don't work, the approach would be a little bit the opposite. What do we need? What do we need? And I'm going to claim here, and we are going to claim in the paper, that we need only a few notions: a notion of belief episodes, a particular account of truth conditions, and an idea of notion, a notion of notion, or sort of like mental files, very basic notion, very basic concept. And with this, once I explain this, I'm going to, go through 3 different examples, 3 different situations, and I'm going to kind of apply this basic concept, right, and see how it works. That's the basic idea. Yeah, of course. Okay. Whether this can be applied to all of the cases or not, that's another question. But at least I want to claim that for the basic examples, the classic examples, the classic type of cases, it works perfectly well. We don't need anything else. That's the basic idea. So, first concept: episodes. What is an episode? Well, an episode is an event. Is something, a particular event. So they can be utterances, beliefs, desires, fears. So we call them cognitive episodes because they have cognitive contents. So an episode can be very brief, like my thought now that I am talking, or that I am sleepy, or that I am hungry, or the perception of a bolt of lightning. Or they can be very long, like the fear I will have from now on, a fear of lightning, right? So that fear will be long. Or the belief that my name is Maria. So this is one belief I've had for many years, and hopefully I will have for many years to come, right? Till I die or I forget my name, right? Either, whatever comes first. So they have these episodes, like, well, we're going to be focusing on belief, but they have cognitive contents. So they are events that occur in time and space, and they have cognitive contents. These contents basically track truth conditions in the case of beliefs and statement, or satisfaction conditions in the case of orders or desires, right? Of course, if you wish, you could think of these contents as propositions. So the episode have propositions that are kind of contents that keep track of the truth condition, of what needs to be the case for that belief to be satisfied, or satisfaction condition, what needs to be the case for that desire to be satisfied, that particular desire. The problem with the term propositions is, as long as you use it as just mere theoretical tools to keep track of this truth or satisfaction conditions, that would be okay. But that's a very difficult thing to do, because proposition is such a philosophically rich notion that what we are doing is trying to avoid it altogether. Just try not even to mention propositions, just avoid propositions, because you're going to get into a lot of philosophical problems that are just not useful at this point, right? These are different philosophical problems. Episodes, the last thing is, they have causes and effect. They are particular events in space and time. So my perceiving a bolt of lightning, will cause me to, get into the house or something like that. My belief that I'm sleepy will make me go home and sleep, something like that, okay? Now, second notion, sorry, I read notion and I say no. Second concept that we need is the concept of a notion, right? A notion is a mental file containing information and misinformation about an object. They have origins, and these origins can be real or unreal. So we establish one difference: buffers and detached notions. Buffers are temporally notions, so usually are created by perception. So my perception of my keyboard while I'm typing will generate a buffer of that keyboard. Now, I do have a notion, a detached notion of my keyboard back at home. So they are usually stored in memory, and now, so I have a buffer of the day to day, which is formed by the perception of this moment that I can extend in 24 hours. Tomorrow, I will not. It will be a detached notion, right? I will only be able to remember today. Now, I'm not going to get into many details about notions, just because we don't really need it for this talk, for this purpose. But of course, files, mental files or notions, mental files are notions and ideas. It's sort of like Fregean senses, but not exactly. So for instance, for Frege, senses determine the reference. For John Perry, or also for Recanati, they do not. Right, so you don't get to the reference through the mental file. Okay, they can have origins or they can lack them. So I can have a detached notion of my grandchild, even though I don't have a grandchild. But I can have a notion of how my grandchild would look and how nice she would be and all of that, even though I do not have a grandchild. Okay. So they can be freely created, or they can have an origin in a real entity. They can be displayed, they can be merged, they can be linked, they can be divided. Again, this is, if you want more information about mental files and about notions, other than a few papers by John Perry, there's obviously Recanati's book in 2012 called Mental Files. I mean, the title of the book is Mental Files. And he does give a very long and very nuanced and detailed account. We don't agree with everything he says, but roughly that's okay. And they are the building blocks. We'll see why a little bit. I'm not going to get into many details because it's just a bit confusing, but we're going to see, I hope, why. Yeah. The last thing is, in critical referentialism, the idea is every utterance, every episode, every belief, every cognitive episode will have an array of satisfaction conditions or truth conditions, right? So we have various levels of truth conditions depending according to the facts about the episode that are taken for granted. Let's focus on belief episodes. So let's forget about desires or whatever. So we have truth conditions. We don't have satisfaction conditions. The truth conditions of belief episodes depend on the notions and the ideas involved in the episode and the origin of those notions. That is the subject matter, the things at the origin of our notions. So there can be many levels. I'm going to point out 3 here. So the referential truth condition will give you the subject matter of the belief episode. So that's basically all the information that make that belief utterance true, right? So you have facts about the context of the episode and about the notions and the ideas involved, right? We're going to see it with an example a bit easier. Now you can get a notion power, and that is leave aside the facts about the origins, if any, of the notions and the ideas. So if I say, I am Maria, well, the referential truth condition would be the speaker or the subject, the agent of the belief is the person, blah, 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 Maria. The notion will not give me the origin, I will disappear from the truth conditions, right? That would be true if and only if the notion I associate with the indexical I happens to be Maria, right? But me, the physical woman here sitting, I disappear. It's just I'm taking into account the notion I associate with I am Maria, right? So it's a bit like if I say it is, I don't know, whatever. Right? I'm not giving more examples because we're going to see it. And hybrid, well, we have all the truth conditions where you have some of the facts are given, some are not. It gets pretty flexible. These are truth conditions. These are not things that are expressed by an utterance. These are not truth values. These are just truth conditions that every belief episode have, okay? So we have episodes, belief episodes. We have we have notions, and we have truth conditions. I know I'm going a bit fast, but I think now what I'm going to do is present 3 cases, and let's apply this framework to these cases and see what conclusions we can get with regard to cognitive dynamics, right? So the first set of examples involve a nice day, right? So suppose you have these 3 belief episodes. The first one, it will be a very nice day tomorrow. So suppose today, September the 20th, Kaplan checks the weather report and believes something that he would express normally by, it will be a nice day tomorrow. The second is tomorrow, Saturday, September 21, Kaplan wakes up, opens the window and sees a wonderful day. So it is a nice day today. The third one is Sunday, September 22nd. Kaplan he wakes up and remembers all the things he did the previous day. So it was a nice day yesterday, okay? So now here we have 3 different belief episodes. These are 3 different events with causes and effects, as we're going to see. But they share the same referential truth conditions. That is, assuming that they are all believe these episodes took place in the same location, right? Assuming that it's not one in China and another one in Brazil, but they are in the same location. 3 of them, the 3 belief episodes, will be true if and only if September 21st has the property of being nice. So this is the subject matter. This is the referential truth conditions. 1, 2, and 3. They will be true if and only if September 21st was, and will be a nice day, right? Be a nice day. So sharing that referential truth condition, sharing the subject matter, what makes them true, accounts for the intuition we have, a very clear intuition that the Kaplan, today, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, believed the same thing about the same day. So we have the impression, of course, I mean, it's a different kind of belief. The first day he was anticipating, the second day he was enjoying, and the third day he was remembering. But he was believing the same thing about the same day, right? Of course, Frege will say this is because he was believing a complete thought. And Evans will say a thought that was dynamic, it was changing. And maybe we don't need that so far. We don't need complete thoughts with all the complications and how can it be a complete thought with indexical. So far, all we need is, look, the referential truth conditions are the same, right? What makes 1, 2, and 3 true is the same fact, the same day having the property of being nice. There are different belief episodes, as I say, because they happened at different times. They are caused by different belief states. And the first one is, whatever, and they have different effects. Let me elaborate a little bit more. So you have the first one, it will be a nice day tomorrow. This is a belief episode about the future. And the cause of that particular belief episode is the weather report. So Kaplan is sitting, watching TV, and that's what causes this belief episode. In the second one, it is a nice day today. The cause of that belief episode is Kaplan opening the window and perceiving the nice day. So the cause is different. The effect is also different. In that belief, today, Friday, if Kaplan listens to the weather report and think, oh, tomorrow is going to be a nice day, that has some effects. Maybe he would say, oh, I should go fishing. Let me prepare everything, or I'm going to go swimming. I'm going to go to the beach. So he will make plans according to that, right? So the effects of that belief episode are particular. Now, again, I'm not going to get into details, but I thought it was interesting to have a short account of how notions work. So this is a prediction involving a particular day, September 2021, through or via a temporal notion, a buffer-dependent descriptive notion. What I meant to say is partly buffer, partly descriptive, because partly detached. It involves a buffer of the present day. The notion of tomorrow involves the perception of the present day and knowing that it is the day after the day I'm perceiving. So that's a description. So tomorrow is the day that comes after the day I'm right now perceiving. So you have the buffer notion, the day I'm perceiving, descriptive notion, the next day, something like that. And if we were to talk about the notion-bound truth conditions, again, just for the sake of seeing it, one, it will be a nice day tomorrow, will be true if and only if the date that is the origin of Kaplan's notion of today is nice. If and only if the notion associated with tomorrow is nice, where the notion for tomorrow is the notion created by Kaplan for his planning for the next day of the day of the episode, right? Look, September 21 is not there. We might be talking about October. We might be talking about the notion truth condition will not give you the day. It will give you a notion and the conditions that need to be satisfied, right? So it will not give you the full truth conditions because the day just disappears, right? It's just a notion. Now, of course, it is a nice day today. The second belief episode is about the present. So let me just go quickly here. Kaplan has a belief about a particular day, September 21, through or via a buffer, notion of today, that automatically picks up, opening the window, nice day, you get a notion of the present day, the day in which you're living in. The notion-bound truth conditions of it is a nice day today would be, two is true if and only if the day that is the origin of Kaplan's buffer notion today is nice, where notion today is the notion created by Kaplan through his continuous perceptions during the day, right? Again, September 21 is nowhere to be seen. The conditions are put on Kaplan, so to speak, on the notions that Kaplan has, right? So it will not give us the subject matter, but it gives us a lot of information, a part of it. Now, with this example, let me give you two possibilities, because again, remember, we are worried here about cognitive dynamics, continued belief or discontinued belief. Suppose that on day 2, sorry, it's not July 1, it's September 21. I forgot to change that one, sorry. Kaplan remembers his prediction of the past day. So he remembers perfectly well what he thought today on Friday. So 2, that is, it is a nice day today, counts as sort of a confirmation of 1. This has a lot of effects. Like Kaplan would say, oh, the weather report is good. I'm going to keep following it because it's very accurate. He would probably be happy. It's good that I made plans to go fishing because now I have everything ready and blah, blah, blah. What happens here is that the notion he has, the buffer he has of today, and the notion he had of tomorrow are linked somehow in such a way that the former, the notion today, would incorporate the information of tomorrow, notion tomorrow, right? So they are linked and they are merged somehow. This is how Recanati will explain it. My prediction about tomorrow, if tomorrow it happens that it is a good day, they will be linked and they will be merged. So in this case, we have identity of referential truth conditions. The day is the same, September 21, and we are predicating the same thing, that is a nice day. And that guarantees that we have continued belief. That's one of the claims. And of course, there's no change of mind because the notions are linked, so and merged, so there is no contradiction. So in this case, this is the easiest case. So you have continued belief, you keep believing the same thing because the referential truth conditions are the same and the notions are linked. So the origins are the same, the origins of the two notions. So that makes the notions linked. Of course, there is no change of mind. And there is a continuity in belief, even if there are two independent episodes with different notions involved, different ideas, okay? Now, case B, a bit more complex, a little bit, okay? Suppose Kaplan completely forgets about his predictions the previous day. He wakes up tomorrow, Saturday, he sees it is a wonderful day, but he doesn't remember any of his plans, any of his predictions, he doesn't remember anything. He's just happy, oh, it's a nice day, and he starts making plans from zero. He doesn't have, whatever. No change occurs in his trust on the weather forecast, whatever. What happens here? What happens here is there's no link between the two notions. His notion of tomorrow and his notion of today are not linked. This is why we say that he forgot. You forget something when, that something yesterday you thought about today and what you're thinking about today, because your two notions are not linked. This is what forgetting is, basically. But the referential truth conditions are the same. Kaplan believes the same. But because he doesn't remember, because the two notions are not linked, what we're going to say is there's no continuity of belief. There's no continued belief. There's no change of mind. He still believes the same thing. The origin of these two different notions is the same, but the two notions are not linked. So Kaplan is not believing the same thing. There's no continuity of belief. There is a kind of like, before and after, right? So this is what we claim. Okay, so there is no continued belief, but there is no change of mind. Let me go through this, and then we go to the conclusions of this. The third belief episode was, it was a nice day yesterday. So we're on Sunday now. Kaplan is on Sunday, and again, this notion is partly descriptive, containing a description of the day before this one, partly a buffer through the perception of today, right? September 2021, sorry. So again, and this is just for the sake of putting it there, the notion-bound truth conditions of 3 was a nice day yesterday. 3 is true if and only if the day that is the origin of Kaplan's notion yesterday is nice, where notion yesterday is the notion created by Kaplan for the day before the day of the episode, right? Again, September 21 disappeared. There's nowhere to be seen. We're just talking about notions, okay? 3, of course, has the same referential truth conditions as 1 and 2. Obviously, we're always talking about September 21 being nice. We have exactly the same thing here. I just outlined it. If Kaplan remembers that the previous day had been nice, then Kaplan is going, and he went fishing, he had a great day. Kaplan has a buffer notion today with the present day as his origin, September 22nd, Sunday. He also has a partly detached notion for the previous day, September 21, and there is a link between the notions today for September 2022 is converted into notion yesterday, right? So the change, let me put it, maybe this way is easier to say. The change of context that happens at midnight, right? So we go from one day, let's say Saturday to Sunday. The change of context provokes a change in access to the day. That's recanati. Basically, I can perceive today, Friday, until 11:59 tonight. From midnight on, I can no longer perceive Friday, September 20. I can only remember it. So there is a change in the way we have access to that day. There's no change in the day. It's just the way in which we access it. So in that case, what is happening in KC here, is that Kaplan can no longer access September 21 by perceiving it. He can only remember it. But if he does remember that he had a notion created by perception and he links them, he has the same belief. There's continuity of belief and no change of mind. That's kind of the requirement. Of course, if again, Kaplan doesn't have any memory of the previous day, even if he doesn't have any memory, but he's watching TV again and the weather forecast said it was a nice day yesterday, he will come to believe on Sunday that it was a nice day on Saturday. but not because he remembers perceiving Saturday and having the notions today as being nice, but just because the weather forecast guy said that. So again, there's no link between these two notions. So again, there's no continued belief. Kaplan doesn't remember. There's no change of mind. So you have, again, this belief episode has the same referential truth conditions as 1 and 2. It has the same notion-bound truth conditions of case A, right? It's the same notion-bound truth conditions, but there's no link between notion yesterday, notion today. The two notions involved. So the notion yes, in this case, contains the notion yesterday contains the information that Kaplan got from the radio, from the TV, it was nice yesterday, and the notion today contained the information that Kaplan had by perceiving Saturday. And these are not connected, right? So it's Sunday, Kaplan hears in the radio or on the TV, it was a nice day yesterday, so he creates notion yesterday was nice. Yesterday, Saturday, he had a notion today, a buffer about the day, and these two are not connected. They're both notions about the same day, but they are not connected in any way because he doesn't remember, right? So no continued belief, no change of mind. Provisional conclusions. For continued belief, we need the same referential truth conditions. We need to be believing the same thing about the same day in this case, and an appropriate link between the notions involved. Now, I know that this is not very informative. What I mean to say is I know that there's, what do you mean by the appropriate link? Here I'm just leaving it like in a very basic level. It's just they have to be connected somehow. He has to realize that they are one and the same, that the origin of these two notions are the same. Look, this is the notion of locating belief of John Perry. So you have, I am making a mess, John Perry is making a mess. When does he realize that he's believing the same thing about the same person? When he gets knowledge of the identity, I am John Perry. When he realizes that the origin of the notion of I and the knowledge of the notion of John Perry are one and the same. They have the same origin, the guy John Perry. This is why when he realizes, oh, okay, here's the same. Let me put it, my notion of today, Friday, my notion of tomorrow, Saturday. So, yes, so on Sunday, my notion of today and my notion of yesterday is only when I know that the origin of these two notions are one and the same day, September 21, that I say, oh, yeah, it was nice, I know, they're continued belief. I might have two different notions. If I have amnesia, I might have a notion of I associated with I, and I might have a notion of Maria de Ponte, because, you know, I Google myself and I get a lot of information about Maria de Ponte, not that many, because, you know, I'm not famous, there's not much in Google, but, you know, I ask around and I say, oh, Maria de Ponte, she was an associate professor. I look at this video and I say, you know, whatever. And then I have a notion associated with my uses of I. Unless I realize that the origin of these two notions is one and the same human being, I will not, you know, there's no continuity of belief. There's a link that is broken. They have to be linked in order for me to, oh, so I am Maria de Ponte. Okay, right? So these are all like the John Perry's making a mess. Also, the example he gives with Ernst Mach, he's a shabby pedagogue until he realizes that, oh, the guy in the mirror is me, so I am a shabby pedagogue. It's basically the same stuff, right? You need the origin of the notions, but we are focusing on time here. So you need, for continued belief, we need the same referential truth conditions, the same subject matter, and an appropriate link between the notions involved. And the knowledge or attunement to this, to the identity of origin relation between notions is very important. Again, this is the notion of locating belief. That attunement is important. Oh my God, 41 minutes. I'll go quickly, okay? Sorry, I talked too much. Let me at least give you this example. These examples are much faster. So far, what we had were like very short episodes with very durable content. Let me give you an example that is completely the opposite, okay? This is also an example by John Perry, and this is a case where you have a very long, rather long belief episode, but changing content. So someone is being driving around the environments of Bloomington, Indiana, retains the text, "This is Monroe County." Unknown to her, she leaves and re-enters the county several times in the course of the drive. So the error proposition, that is the referential truth conditions, we will say now, of the belief change, right? She keeps believing this is Monroe Country, but she keeps coming in and out of the county. Isn't this a case of continued belief? What do we have here? We have one belief episode, self-located. This is, so I am in Monroe Country. If you prefer, you can think about it like that. Referential truth conditions change, right? Because this is true, this is false, this is true, this is false. Depends on how you go through the line. Truth value changes every time she crosses the country limits. There is no change in the spatial buffer involved. She doesn't change her notion. She keeps perceiving something and thinking or having the notion of this is Monroe County. But there are changes in the origin of that notion. The changes in the context of the belief episode affects its truth conditions and truth value. Is it continued belief? This is a tricky case. We think no. We think whether or not there is knowledge or attunement to a relevant identity between the origin of this special buffer she forms and maintains and Monroe, this is what we need to have continued belief. That the notion she has of Monroe and Monroe, the county, they remain identical, right? And she needs to have that knowledge. She doesn't have that knowledge, so it's not continuous belief, right? She takes the origin of the notion this to be Monroe and does it while being driving around. So there's no continuity of belief, but there's no change of mind either. She hasn't changed her mind, okay? Okay. Maybe we'll have with Eduarda, we can comment on something. This is the last case, and it's pretty quickly too. I mean, it's a different. This is the only case I have where we have a change of belief. So suppose at T1, I look at the watch and I think it's 1 p.m. now. Later, I come to think, oh no, my watch is not working well. So actually, it was not 1 p.m. then. I forgot to change my watch after the flight or something like that. This is an example by Nina and is quoted by Recanati. John Perry actually has a much more complex example, but it's too long. Okay, but this is good enough. Here, what we have is a case of belief revision. I had a notion associated, I say it is 1 p.m. And then at a later moment, I say, oh no, I was wrong. So this is a clear case of change of mind. We have two belief episodes, two notions, notion now, notion then. The notions involved are linked. And because they are linked, I can change it. I realize that the one was wrong, right? So in this case, we have continuity of belief. No, we don't have continuity of belief. We have change of mind, right? Even though the notions are linked. This is a summary somehow. So if you have here case A, you have two belief episodes. Case A is it was nice, it will be nice, it is a nice day today, it was nice. Case A is when Kaplan remember that he thought it was going to be nice. You have two belief episodes, same referential conditions, both when he remembers and when he doesn't remember. The notions in the case where he remembers what he believed the previous day, the notions are linked. So you have continued belief, you don't have change of mind. In the case where he forgets, the notions are not linked, so you don't have continued belief, you don't have a change of mind. This is Monroe. You have one belief episode that stretches through time. Different truth conditions, different referential truth conditions, because sometimes you have Monroe, sometimes you don't. One notion, this, notion this, no continued belief, and no change of mind. It was not 1 p.m. then. You have two belief episodes, same truth conditions, referential truth conditions. The notions are linked, but there's no continued belief, and there is change of mind. Now, too much probably for a talk, and now I'm a bit out of time. But I hope one of the things that I hope, I've managed to change, and this is that for continued belief, what do we need? Well, it seems like we need the same referential truth conditions and an appropriate link between notions involved. Also the importance of attunement. But the thing is, the theoretical tools we need to point at the relevant similarities and dissimilarities between the various problematic cases is pretty simple. What I mean to say, we don't need to think about in complete thoughts or not. The doctrine of propositions, according to which a belief consists in a relation between a subject and one proposition, is just not adequate. How are you going to deal with all of that? Because you need to take into account the world, the actual day, the actual person, the actual location, how this location or how this day relates to your notion that is going to be key for what you believe, and how these notions are connected. What the ideas, the mental files you have in your mind, how are they connected? All of this cannot be accounted for in 1 or 10,000 propositions, if you think of propositions as, so I think this is a flexible. And to conclude, very short reflection. So this is David Lewis. This was David Lewis in 1979. This is the famous paper on Dessin by David Lewis. And he concludes right in the end of the paper, he says, he explains Jean Perret's proposal, and he says, that is Perret's proposal. I'm sure it works as well as mine, but it is more complicated. I doubt that the extra complexity buys anything. Do we need an scheme as elaborate as Perret? I think not. Well, two things, and with this, I think that would be, first, I do believe we need a complex schema, because it is a complex issue. We think of cognitive dynamics and the roles of indexicals in thought and language. These are very complex, and we have many different possible scenarios, and we have a lot of complexity. And I think it's kind of like in an Austinian frame of mind, Austin, when he said, look, philosophers, when they have more like than 7 distinctions, they say infinite. Instead of falling into that mistake, no, we need to kind of analyze each case and maybe really check out what do we need to account for it. It's going to become complex, but it is a complex issue. And I think that having subtle and rich distinctions and concepts gets us by, as Lewis says, plausible, and this is the second point, in many ways, simpler explanation. I mean, if you go to Lewis's proposal, it's simpler in one sense, but it's much more complicated in another. You have to accept the propositions are properties, the properties are sets of possible worlds, that every time you believe something, you're self-attributing a property, that you have infinite amount of possible worlds, concrete, that there are counterparts of you, and so on and so on and so on. So it really is very complicated. And the framework we are defending here, basically you have belief episodes, just individual events, truth conditions, or satisfaction conditions, things you need to make that true or to make that desire satisfied, and a notion of mental files, so different kinds of notions, and some theory about how they're connected. Ontologically speaking, is much more simpler, and theoretically and methodologically speaking, I think is also much more simpler. We need objects, we need properties, relations, and their mental correlates. So anyway, maybe too many examples, but I hope that I gave like an overall view of how we could, apply this framework to discuss several cases. So thank you again, Eduarda, and the organizers. It's been a pleasure. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Maria. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. This was very illuminating, very interesting. I will just point out for everyone in the audience that if they want to ask questions, I will kick the discussion, we'll start the discussion, but if you want to ask questions, you can just use the chat. So, em português, eu vou começar as discussões com a Maria, mas se vocês quiserem fazer perguntas, é só usar o chat do YouTube. A partir de agora, todos já podem começar a perguntar. Well, as I said, I thought this was very illuminating. I particularly like the strategy of, in a sense, revisiting that 1980s paper, The Problem of Continued Belief, and making it richer. And I mean, it's more complex from a classificatory point of view because you have more tools. But yes, I agree, it's simpler from an ontological perspective. And but you actually managed to make the examples less confusing because they were very confusing. The Smith case, it was. So I really like the spirit of the proposal, and I don't have objections to make. I'm very sympathetic to the framework. So I'll basically ask a few things to clarify certain notions and make a request later. So my first point, it's a very simple question, actually a very kind of yes or no question. It has to do with the notion of cognitive episode. And it relates to this previous work from Perry, because I don't know if I understand it correctly, if it is the same or if the idea here is to replace belief states. Maybe not. I think it's different. So if you could clarify why the terminological change here for episodes instead of states.
Yeah, that's a very good question, actually. They're not the same thing. The reason why, I don't know when he started talking about episodes. I remember the first time. There's a paper we wrote, actually, but it was John Perry's idea, so the whole episode thing. That was in 2020. It's called Utterances and Context. And the idea is, look, actually, I'm going to come back to to the point, but the idea is, look, when we discuss utterances, not only beliefs, we usually use Kaplan's framework, and we think in terms of sentences in context. And the idea, and this comes from critical pragmatics, I would say, the idea is, look, if we think of, say, language as a sort of an action, and belief in this case, to understand many of the things that happens in pragmatics and also in cognitive dynamics, I think, thinking in terms of sentences and context, it doesn't help. It's because, it's not as flexible. And there are many possibilities that we leave out. So sentence and context is very, very good, but it was a framework designed to understand the logic of demonstratives. But when we do logic, we do logic. But now we're trying to understand communication in the case of utterance. And this is a completely different game. And the idea is, instead of thinking of sentences and context, let's focus on the event, the act itself, the utterance. And in cognitive dynamics, I think it's the same thing. If you think in terms of either a mental state or either of, the sentence that you believe and the context, you're going to find probably, I'm not saying it's not possible, but it's not going to give you the flexibility you mean. And I think episodes have many advantages. One, I already said, they are events, they have causes, they have effects, so you can actually say which one. You have the context, you have the truth, and it gives you the flexibility of, look, these are things that happen in time. You believe something, and then you believe something else, and, it's the same thing, or it's different, or how do we change? These are things that happen in your mental life. So obviously, in order to have a belief episode, you're going to be in a mental state. You're going to be in a belief state. So they're connected. But thinking of it in terms of events gives us more flexibility. So it's a bit long to explain now, but there is a problem. And that is, okay, what do we mean by an event? How do you individuate events? And that's an ontological problem, and you get into that. So some people, but other than that, it's fairly simple. So that was the idea. So obviously you are in a mental state when you have a belief episode. But we want to say there's something else, and that's, that's the idea. Because in the 77, you had what is belief and how it is belief. And how it is belief is the mental state in which you are. Now you get the two of them kind of, okay, you have a belief episode. That implies being in a certain belief state, obviously, and having certain content. So you have them both in one notion. That's the idea. But yes, they are connected. So
yes, I thought.
Yeah.
Sorry. No, I thought that it would go that direction, because you're now offering more. I will stick with the expression classificatory tools here, but that are more complicated. I mean, in number, they are in greater number than these distinction of what was what was thought and the way it was thought. So yes, okay. I guess this answers my question. I do believe we have questions from the public. I have a few other questions, but we could bring one question to the table. So we have Jersey's question. Hi, very nice to have you here. So the question is in English. Thank you very much. So I don't have to go through the trouble of translating, but I will read it out loud. It goes like this. So, say an author of fiction writes about a certain living person, say Napoleon. When reading the fiction, are we required to imagine things about the person that causally originated the author's notion?
Well, this is a very complicated. Thank you. This is a very good question, and it's a very complicated question because you're giving a very complex example. So let's forget about Napoleon for the second. Let's talk about Sherlock Holmes. I go back to Napoleon. So like a pure fictional character, because Napoleon, you have War and Peace, but let's start with Sherlock Holmes. Conan Doyle writes about Sherlock Holmes. He has a notion of Sherlock Holmes detached with a lot of descriptions. Are we supposed to, I don't know how he put the question, but are we supposed to kind of get at the origin, the same origin? Yeah. To imagine things about the person, the causally origination, the author. I assume so, but I'm not entirely sure. Are we required to imagine things about the person? I would say that we are at least required to link our notion of Sherlock Holmes or Napoleon, fictional Napoleon, with the notion of Tolstoy or Conan Doyle's Napoleon. Our detached notion of fictional Napoleon and our detached notion of, and Tolstoy's fictional notion of fictional Napoleon have to share many properties. Do they have to share the same origin? I'm not sure. I don't know how to answer that. That's a good question. Probably not. Probably not. It depends how you understand fiction and how you understand. I'm not entirely sure. And of course, in the case of Napoleon, it gets a bit more complicated because it seems that at least we should be able to have the same origin of the notion of the real Napoleon to understand that, okay, Napoleon was a real historical figure, but now we're doing fiction. It seems. But I'm not entirely sure even in that case. I mean, suppose an alien comes here and read War and Peace, knowing that it's a fictional novel, suppose, right? It's a clever alien, but doesn't know anything about the history of Europe in the past centuries. That alien, she will not know that Napoleon was a historical figure, but I guess she can perfectly well understand the book. I'm speaking while I'm thinking. I haven't thought about this, but this is actually a good question. Yeah, thank you. I guess you have to imagine things about, at least the origin of your notion have to be appropriately or sufficiently similar. So yeah, to the origin of the notion of the author. But not necessarily. If Conan Doyle was inspired by his neighbor, he had a neighbor who was very intelligent, and he got inspired by this neighbor to write about Sherlock Holmes because his neighbor was super clever, a bit nasty, and always smoking opium. That was the origin somehow of his notion, and then it's a fiction. We don't need that. We don't need to know that. So if that's what we're talking about, then no. But we certainly, our notions have to be linked in some way. But anyway, yeah, good question. I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah. Thank you. Sorry about the incomplete answer. Yeah.
Well, we have another question, but before we move on to the next question, I wanted to ask another one from the presentation specifically, about the presentation specifically. It has to do with the Kaplan case of yesterday. This one in which Kaplan does not remember that he had a nice day, and he is informed by a broadcaster that the previous day was a good day. It was a nice day. And in the end, you put on the table, and you said that these notions are not linked. And I was having a hard time. I had a hard time understanding that they are not linked, that they cannot be linked just because the source of the information is not the internal dynamics of the individual, but an external event, so to speak. It seems to me that they are linked. Maybe I'm missing the qualification. You said something in your presentation. I didn't really get to grab that idea. So there's something about the epistemic situation of the subject.
Well, they're not linked because he doesn't remember. I mean, they're linked because they have the same origin. So obviously, they are both notions about September 21, but they are not linked in the appropriate way because he's not attuned to that fact, to the fact that he had a different notion previously. He doesn't remember his notion today.
Okay, so he has to be aware that he had
somehow
a notion.
Again, a case with amnesia is somehow also, suppose I hit my head now, let me touch wood, and I forget who I am. So then somebody will tell me, oh, you are Maria de Ponte, that's your name, whatever. I will get a notion, Maria de Ponte, a notion of who I am. And it will be kind of similar to the one I have now, at least, but they will not be linked. They are linked because I am the same person, but I will not believe, my belief will not be continued because I don't remember all the things I knew from before. I just don't. So in that sense, because when we're talking about belief, it is very important to take into account your knowledge of that, your attunement to that knowledge. So that's why I say if John Perry doesn't, connect John Perry with I, if he hears John Perry, but he thinks, oh, they're talking about a different John Perry, he needs attunement to that identity. And Kaplan is the same. He needs the attunement to my notion yesterday and the notion I had yesterday, today, they are about one and the same day. If he forgets about this previous notion, he doesn't get to be attuned to that identity. Maybe his wife comes in and say, yeah, come on, don't you remember yesterday you were so happy? And oh yes, you're right, now I remember. And then he would link them.
So it has to be the product of this attunement. The link cannot just be, because I was thinking about situations in which, I don't know, perhaps this is a bad example, but the phosphorus is phosphorus, and now I established the link. It's not indexical, so it's not a good example. But I established the link because I learned from something. In this case, there has to be like a personal experience of attunement.
There has to be a link between, let's talk of ideas, of your idea of suppose I know about you, Eduarda, blah, 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 but I've never seen you. And then I see you and I say hello. And now I have a notion, a buffer about the woman I'm perceiving. Oh, she looks nice, blah, blah, blah. And then I had a detached notion of Eduarda Calado, blah, 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 blah. Are my beliefs about Eduarda Calado and my beliefs about the woman I'm talking with, are they linked? No, they're not connected. They're both beliefs about you, but I'm not attuned to that fact. I don't know that. Once you tell me my name is Eduarda Calado, I'm like, you, the philosopher, really? Oh, we've been sending emails to each other. Oh, then I link them, and then I realize I was being silly and I'm believing the same thing. So yeah, that's the basic idea.
Okay. So now we can move on to Ernesto, that you know very well. So let me.
Yes, another good and tricky question, Ernesto. Yes, thank you. First one, notion of attunement. Yes, lots to be said there. Basically, I'm using it here just like knowledge, just knowledge of the identity, of the relevant identity between the origins of the two notions. Of course, we are basing that idea on situation semantics. It's a little contradicting understanding.
I'm sorry, I didn't read it. I'm going to read it out loud. You have more time. So there seems to be at least a contrast between I thoughts on the one side and here and now thoughts on the other. The attunement to agency that seems to be involved in I thoughts and not on the later.
Yeah, I agree. I see your point, but that's yeah, because in the case of temporal or locating beliefs in time with the now and with the here, the nunc and the hinc thoughts. By the way, this terminology that you mentioned is very obscure, and I know for a fact, I think Ernesto, you would also know it, maybe Eduardo, that for instance, Perry doesn't like it at all, and he doesn't like it because people keep saying I defend that. I don't even know what they mean. I mean, I've never used it, so I'm not really sure what they say I defend. But of course, if we take it just to mean indexical beliefs that would be expressed with a temporal indexical or with a temporal with a special indexical, that makes sense. Yeah, I know what you mean, that the attunement to agency that seems to be involved. Yeah, so yeah, but that seems to be just a qualitative difference. So obviously, well, I'm not sure why the agency. I mean, all the buffers I have about myself come from perception about myself, or for me doing things from a first person perspective. Is that what you mean? That it's not only me perceiving myself, but me doing things. So that's what generates the notion. That's what you mean. I mean, the notions associated with the I are basically linked to agency. I am the agent. I am the one believing, or something like that. It might be. Yeah, the attunement is different. We are basically using attunement in the situation semantic sense, and in the sense of attunement to set of properties and all of that. But we definitely should elaborate that a little bit more in the paper. I'm not sure if this is what you mean, Ernesto, that the idea is when you have I thoughts, attunement is more immediate. Are you defending something like Cartesian, Descartes kind of thing? Like, it's just I am the one who's doing the believing. So the attunement comes directly, let's say. And on the other hand, the attunement to the present day requires perceiving the moment and being able to extend it 24 hours. Is that, if that's what you mean, yes, that might be a difference, but only qualitative, not, I mean, I don't think it is a, anyway, yeah. Okay, I'm writing it down. I'm not
You have the link, then you can just watch it. So
Thanks.
Oh yes, so I think he added something. Perception of action seems to come from contingencies between what you want to do and the effects of your actions, or something like that.
Yeah, so you're attuned. Yeah, but that doesn't have much to do with the origin of your notions, right? Oh, the origin of the notion of yours, of I, will come with what you want to do effective. Maybe, but I'm not sure how this would affect your notion of I and how you linked it with your notions of Ernesto Perini, or I'm not really sure about that. I'm not really sure how to work that. But I see the point. I mean, that's probably why some people say that I is the real essential indexical. Of course, now too, and here is not essential in the Castañeda sense, because you can define it with the other two. And actually, I would say that something similar to what you're saying could be said for now, but I'm not sure. But yes, you have a point there. Okay. Yeah. There's a sort of like a primitiveness to the attunement to our self notion, or something like that. I guess that's what he's saying. Is that what he's saying? Like there's sorry, I don't want to answer, but if that's what you're saying, you have a point. There is a primitive access and direct access to our self notion in that sense, I guess, that we don't necessarily have to our location and time. Yeah, I agree. So that would be a difference. Mm-hmm.
I just bridge this with what I was saying before about the kind of link. Seems to me like the qualification of the link, that the link has to somehow be a product of this I perspective. Because otherwise it's not just the link, it's something else about the link that explains continued belief. Thank you, Ernesto. You usually do that. Elaborate my ideas better. This is what I was getting at, and this was
maybe we can talk later. But that's I would like to hear a bit more what you have to say. So I mean, understand it better. So yes, we'll talk later. Thank you, Ernesto.
So I understand we don't have more questions, so I'll just, since we but we still have some time, so I will just ask one last question about the talk specifically, about the Morrow County example. That is you said we could use this space to discuss it a little further. I was thinking that this is for what I understood, you mean that this cannot be a case of continued belief. You said that it cannot be a case of continued belief somehow because it involves just one notion. Like it does not fit all the conditions, and this would be a prominent reason. If so, my question would be if you have the need for two different notions that
no
get linked, because you have like just to conclude, because you have like dynamic modes of presentation a la Recanati or Evans past tense demonstratives, in which you seem to have it's one mode of presentation. Could you say that it's just one notion being updated too? That would count as so I don't really understand why it doesn't count like continued belief. It's just because it has one notion. And what is the problem if it's just one notion? Because you seem to be able to also explain updates of one notion.
It's actually, no, that's a good question. It's actually, we believe it is not continued belief despite there only being one notion. Because you would think if there's only one notion involved and only one episode, of course there's continuity of belief, right? But in this case, the problem is, look, you have one option, you have one belief with only one notion associated, the notion the notion that is a buffer, and you keep updating because, the problem is during time, the origin of that notion keeps changing and you're not attuned to that. Going back to the previous question, you don't know that. So that's why you're not believing the same thing, even though you think you are, because you only have one notion. So this is a tricky case. This also comes from the fact that from the rejection of the theory of doctrine of propositions, actually. If you believe that believing consists in a relation between you and, say, a notion or a proposition or some sort of propositional content, then of course you will be believing the same thing. But we're not saying that. We're saying belief you have different things, and what you have is you have objects, you have properties. So you have Monroe County, so you have reality with Monroe County and other counties, and you have a belief about that, about Monroe County and the other counties. And then of course you have notions, you have ideas about that, and you have because you perceive or because you remember or whatever. The relation between that Monroe County or the origin, the notions you have, and your knowledge of that relation, that's what makes that's what determines whether it is a continued belief or not. And in this case, you have one notion that remains constant, one belief that remains constant, but the origin changes and you don't know it. So the belief, there's no continuity on belief, even though you don't know it. So that might be a bit counterintuitive, because it seems like, look, if I believe that I am Monroe County and I keep believing that, let's say, for an hour, of course I believe that. You cannot tell me I don't believe the same thing. Well, one result of this theory will be you're not. There's no continuity in belief. Of course, there's no change of mind either. You're not changing your mind. You haven't noticed that change. If somebody tells you, no, we are not in Monroe County, then you would change your mind. But nobody told you that. So your notion, it remains. You have the same belief episode. Let me put it this way. Your belief episode would be true, referential truth conditions here, false, true, false. So that changes. That is a big change. So there's no continuity. There cannot be a continuity if you have true and false, if the referential truth conditions change. Because at this point, you're having a belief about Monroe County, and at this point, you're having a belief about another county. So your beliefs are about two different things. And the first belief would be true as long as you're there. And the second would be the same belief will become false. So that is a mark for us of no, there's no continuity, right? Because even though it's the same episode, even though you have the same notion, up to this point is true, up to this point is false in terms of referential truth conditions. You have a belief about one object, one location, and a different one. So they cannot be the same. There cannot be continuity. But I know the whole idea of, but look, I have the same notion and it's one episode. What? It's a bit counterintuitive.
Yes, because it all boils down to the internal perspective. For this, I don't know, it seems like you have to have different perspectives. For the speaker, I don't know, phenomenologically, I don't know how to put it. Yeah. It has all the properties of a continued belief.
But it's also part of the kind of referentialist approach that we have to, critical referentialism. No. I mean, yes, it's very counterintuitive in the sense to think that you keep believing, you keep having the same episode with the same notion, and still you don't have continuity of belief. But put it the other way, it's also very counterintuitive to say, the first 10 minutes you believe this is Monroe Country, this is true. The second 10 minutes, you believe this is Monroe Country, it is false, but it's the same. It is continuity in belief. There cannot be continuity in belief. If you go from truth to false, and you're actually having a belief about Monroe Country, and then you have a belief about, I don't know.
There's a change in aboutness. Yes.
There's a change in truth condition. There's a change in subject matter, in the content, in terms of the referentialism, what you believe in about. And I think that has to be taken into account. And this is our way of taking into account. So we say there's no continuity of belief, but because the person has the same episode, because the person doesn't know it, is not attuned to that change, she keeps the same notion, so she hasn't changed her mind. In the case of, it was not 1 p.m. then, he changes his mind because he realizes that there is a problem with the notions, that there was a mistake, he was wrong, so he changes the mind. But in the case of Monroe, she doesn't change her mind. What happens is she's right, she's wrong, she's right, she's wrong, right? So that's yeah. Anyway.
Okay. Yes. Great. Let me see. I don't think we have more questions. And it's late back in the Basque Country. I imagine you must be tired. So I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so very much.
No, same here. Thank you. I mean, and your questions and the two questions I got are really tricky questions. I'm going to be thinking about Napoleon and Attila for a while. So I'm sure that will improve the paper. So thank you very much.
Okay, that's the point. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone. Thank you for the questions, and I hope this was interesting for everyone. So, let me switch to Portuguese. Muito obrigada a todo mundo que participou, todo mundo na audiência, as perguntas que nós recebemos foram super interessantes e o trabalho da Maria também interessantíssimo e espero que seja interessante para a comunidade. A gente pode encerrar por aqui. Até mais. Bye, bye.